Between 1984 and 2012, a quiet stretch of forest deep in the Appalachian range became infamous among locals for something no tourist brochure would ever mention. Official records, dusty files tucked away in county archives, show that 267 people vanished within a radius of barely 20 square miles. They were hikers, campers, hunters. Some were just kids chasing fireflies too far from their tents. Others were seasoned woodsmen who knew how to read moss on trees and navigate by the stars. But what truly terrified residents was that those who went searching for the missing often disappeared themselves. Rescue parties, deputies, even a few journalists, gone, as if the forest swallowed them whole. By the late 1990s, the sheriff's office quietly stopped sending search teams. A stiffly worded recommendation from state authorities followed. This area is not suitable for recreational visits. Trespassing is strongly discouraged. Unofficially, people called it the Hollow Strip. It's not the bears you should worry about, an old logger once muttered in a bar. It's the ground itself. That place don't want you walking on it. No official ever acknowledged the claim, but maps of the region grew suspiciously vague. Trails leading into the strip were erased from park pamphlets. Satellite images showed nothing unusual, just endless green. And yet, the names on the missing persons list kept piling up. For years, the Hollow Strip became a kind of whispered legend, a campfire story too grim to laugh at. Parents warned children not to wander that way. Truckers took detours to avoid roads brushing the perimeter. Even deer hunters admitted the silence there was wrong, as if the forest itself was listening. And then, in 2023, a small group of urban explorers, obsessed with cold cases and folklore, stumbled across those forgotten files. They weren't content to just read about the strip. They wanted to see it. The fluorescent lights in the county courthouse buzzed faintly overhead, flickering like a dying insect. 4 people huddled around a long oak table, cluttered with photocopies, grainy photographs, and handwritten notes. 267, Eli whispered, his finger tracing the typed column of names. His voice carried the awe of someone staring into an abyss. Closer to 300 if you count the volunteers, Maya corrected, adjusting her glasses. She had that sharp, precise tone of someone who trusted numbers more than legends. "Doesn't matter how you count it," said Jonas, leaning back in his chair, his leather jacket creaking. "That's a graveyard with no graves." At the far end of the table, Rachel had been silent, flipping through a folder of missing persons flyers. She held one up, a smiling teenager with braces, gone since 1997. "And no one ever found a body?" "Not one," Maya said flatly. "Some search parties reported strange terrain, swamps where there shouldn't be swamps. Then their radios cut out. Next thing, silence." Jonas smirked. "Swamps in the mountains? Give me a break." But Rachel didn't smile. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "What if that's the point? Something that's not supposed to be there, but is." Outside, a summer storm rattled the courthouse windows. Thunder rolled like distant drums. The group exchanged glances, as though the forest itself had just cleared its throat. Eli exhaled sharply. "I say we go. No one's been in there for years, right? That's the kind of footage people pay attention to. We could document everything, put it online, finally show what's real." Maya frowned. "You mean what's not real? Call it what you want," Eli said, gathering the files into a backpack. "I'm not sitting on the sidelines. This," he tapped the stack of names, "this is history begging to be uncovered." The storm outside deepened. The lights flickered again. For a moment, Rachel thought she saw the reflection of trees swaying in the glass, though there were none outside the courthouse. Jonas grinned, but his voice carried an edge. "All right then, let's go see if the hollow strip is hungry for 4 more names." The van rattled as it climbed the winding Appalachian roads, tires humming against cracked asphalt. A faint mist clung to the tree line, not thick enough to be called fog, but enough to blur the horizon into a gray haze. Jonas drove, one hand lazily draped over the wheel, the other tapping to some classic rock humming from the radio. The station began to fade as they gained altitude, the guitar riff dissolving into static. He frowned and gave the dial a twist. "Nothing but white noise." "Figures," he muttered. "Dead air. It's like the forest doesn't want music." In the back seat, Eli leaned forward with his phone, trying to film out the window. Perfect. No signal, no distractions. Just us and the legend. Maya, arms crossed tightly, shot him a look. "You say that like it's romantic. In reality, it's just 4 idiots driving into a zone the state literally told people to avoid." Rachel, seated beside her, didn't argue. Instead, she watched the forest. The trees seemed denser here, their trunks crowding together like silent spectators. The air itself felt thicker, heavy with the scent of wet soil and pine sap. Every mile further made her stomach knot tighter, though she couldn't say why. "Hey," Jonas said suddenly, nodding toward the roadside. "You see that?" They all turned. A faded wooden sign leaned crookedly among weeds. The paint had nearly peeled away, but a few words remained. "Warning. Area closed. Trespassing discouraged." Maya pulled her phone closer to squint through the glass. "This isn't on any official map." "Because they don't want anyone coming here," Rachel whispered. Eli smiled with the feverish excitement of someone who had read too many conspiracy blogs. "That's exactly why we're here." The road narrowed to gravel, then to dirt. The van groaned in protest as Jonas forced it over ruts and stones. Branches scraped against the sides like fingernails, leaving long, pale scratches in the paint. "Feels like the place doesn't want us," Rachel said softly. Jonas smirked. "Or maybe it's just a crappy road." But Maya wasn't laughing. She leaned forward, her voice low. "You all realize the last known disappearance was just over a decade ago, right? People came in here and never came back. Whole families, rescuers. You think we're smarter than them?" Eli set the camera down and met her eyes. "Not smarter, just more persistent. Everyone else quit when the forest pushed back. We're not quitting." Rachel turned toward him. "And if the forest pushes harder?" No one answered. The silence filled the van like water, filling a sinking ship. By late afternoon, the road ended in a crude clearing. Jonas killed the engine, and the sudden absence of sound was startling. No birds, no cicadas, not even the faint rustle of wind. Maya opened the door slowly, her boots sinking slightly into damp earth. This isn't right. Even forests have noise. This is... She stopped. Her eyes were fixed on the ground. The earth was darker here, almost black, as if burned. Yet when Rachel crouched to touch it, her fingers came away wet. Mud, but not from rain. Jonas stepped forward and kicked at it with his boot. The ground trembled faintly under the impact, as if it had depth, like hitting a drum stretched too thin. "Great," he muttered. "A swamp in the middle of the mountains. Makes perfect sense." But Eli was already filming, his voice trembling with excitement. "This is it. This is what they meant in the reports. Swamps where none should exist." Rachel didn't move. She was staring at the tree line beyond the clearing. She could have sworn she saw something shift there, a ripple among the branches. Maya followed her gaze. "What is it?" Rachel hesitated. I thought I saw someone standing there." The others froze. The tree line remained still, nothing but silent pines. And yet, in the back of all their minds, the same unspoken thought surfaced. If someone was standing there, then maybe not all of the missing had truly disappeared. The clearing seemed to lean inward as the four of them stepped deeper into it, as if the trees themselves had shuffled closer when no one was watching. The earth here was uneven. Patches of slick mud pooled between dry, cracked soil. A sour, metallic odor drifted upward, sharp enough to sting the nose. Rachel crouched again, wiping her hands against her jeans. It's not just mud. It smells wrong. Jonas sniffed the air and made a face. Like rust, like blood. Maya corrected quietly. No one laughed. Eli lifted the camera, focusing on a glistening patch of earth where bubbles broke the surface. Each bubble swelled slowly, then popped with a wet hiss, releasing more of that metallic stench. "Jesus," Jonas muttered. "It's alive." Rachel's eyes darted to him. "Don't say that." But in her mind, the thought had already taken root. They moved along the tree line, skirting the darker patches. The ground gave way beneath their boots, spongy, too soft for a mountain forest. Branches overhead sagged unnaturally low, heavy with moss that seemed to drip even without rain. "Tell me this doesn't look staged," Eli said, his voice a little too bright, too eager. "Like a set piece in some horror film." "Funny," Maya snapped, brushing damp hair from her face. "Except no film crew ever lost hundreds of people for real." Jonas kept glancing at the trees, jaw tight. "Anyone else notice it's getting darker? Sun's not down yet, but it feels like twilight," Rachel finished for him. She had been thinking the same thing. Shadows pooled in places they shouldn't, collecting between roots beneath low shrubs, as if darkness had a weight of its own here. Then came the sound. At first it was faint, like someone dragging cloth through mud. A slow, sucking pull, followed by a hollow pop. The four froze, heads snapping toward the source. "Did you hear?" Rachel began. "Yeah," Jonas cut her off, hand raised. "Shut up." The sound came again, this time closer. A dragging, pulling, breathing noise, low and rhythmic, like something enormous shifting beneath the muck. Eli whispered, camera trembling in his hands. That's not water. The ground at the center of the clearing rippled, just slightly, but enough, as if something had exhaled from deep underground, and the soil itself had flexed with the breath. Maya's face drained of color. We shouldn't be here. Finally, something we agree on, Jonas muttered, but he didn't move. None of them did. The sound faded, swallowed by silence so complete it rang in their ears. And then, from somewhere beneath that silence, came something worse. Not a single voice, a hive of them. Faint at first, like wind sifting through hollow logs. But soon the pattern sharpened. Whispers. Dozens, maybe hundreds, overlapping, tangled, rising and falling, like a chorus of people talking all at once. The words were broken, distorted, as if dragged backward through water. Some were clear enough to sting. Stay. No way out. We're still here. Eli lowered the camera slightly, his knuckles white. They're speaking. Maya shook her head, though her lips trembled. Not speaking, remembering. Rachel clutched her knees to steady herself. The whispers weren't coming from the forest, not from above or around them. They were seeping upward, straight out of the black earth. The ground changed first. What had looked like mud was thicker here, glossy and black, as if oil had seeped up through the soil. Each step left a print that filled instantly with dark water, erasing their presence, as if the earth refused to remember them. Eli steadied the camera against his chest, his voice taut, eager. This isn't just swamp, it's something else. Rachel leaned closer to the surface, unwilling but unable to turn away. At first, she thought she was staring at a warped reflection, her own face distorted by the ripples. But then it blinked. Hollow eyes, a mouth stretched wide in silence, a stranger's face staring back before collapsing into dark circles. She staggered back. Did you see that? Jonas frowned, scanning the water. See what? A face, right there. It looked at me. Maya shook her head sharply. Mud plays tricks. Pareidolia, shadows, call it whatever you want. But even as she dismissed it, another face appeared. This time a man's, gaunt and pale, lips twitching without a sound, before dissolving into the muck. Then another, and another. Eli cursed, breath uneven, camera quivering in his hands. No tricks. I've got this. It's real. The bog stirred. A faint cracking noise rose beneath them, like ice splitting on a frozen lake. The surface bulged, split, and something pushed through. Not branches, not roots. Dark, sinewy cords erupted from the mire, slick as veins, writhing with a life that didn't belong here. One coiled across Eli's boot before he could react, tightening fast around his ankle. He screamed, dropping the camera as the ground pulled him down. Get it off! Get it off! Jonas lunged, seizing Eli's arm and dragging with all his weight. The tendril flexed, pulling harder. dragging Eli's leg into the bog, up to his shin. Maya dropped beside him, mud streaking her hands as she clawed at the cord. "It's not wood. I don't know what the hell it is." The thing tightened, cutting into Eli's skin. He thrashed, gasping, his eyes wide with animal terror. For a moment, Rachel thought the earth would swallow him whole. She fell to her knees, voice sharp, desperate. "Pull together, now!" With a final, furious heave, Jonas wrenched him free. The cord recoiled, snapping back into the mire with a sound like wet leather torn in two. Eli collapsed, choking, clutching his ankle. Angry red welts wrapped around his leg, blistered as though burned. The camera lay half submerged at the edge of the bog, its lens still pointed at the water. On the screen, the four of them watched what none of them dared to meet with their own eyes. The mire was alive with faces. Dozens, men, women, children, pressing against the surface from below. Pale and warped, mouths opening and closing in uneven rhythm. Not speaking, not screaming. Something in between. Jonas reached out and shut the camera off with a trembling hand. His voice came out brittle, hollow. "We're leaving, right now." They left the clearing in a rush, stumbling over roots and brambles, mud still clinging to Eli's boots like a parasite that refused to let go. Jonas kept glancing back, one hand hovering near his pocket knife, though it looked like a toy against what they had just seen. "Keep moving," he snapped. "Eyes forward. Don't stop." Maya stayed close behind, her face pale, lips pressed thin. The faces, we saw them, all of us. That was real. Jonas didn't answer. His silence said enough. Rachel trailed at the rear, scanning the forest. The trees had drawn tighter together, the trunks leaning as if closing ranks. What should have been a path was shrinking into a funnel, and within minutes, it vanished altogether. They stopped at a wall of thicket. No trail, no trace of the clearing. "This isn't the way," Jonas muttered. "It has to be," Maya snapped. "We didn't turn anywhere." "Look," he pointed into the dark mass of trees. "Do you see tire marks? A footprint? Anything?" Silence. The forest had wiped everything clean. Then came the sound. Whispers. At first so faint, they could have been mistaken for wind. But wind doesn't string syllables together. Wind doesn't breathe words that scrape the ear. The voices layered over one another, low, broken, almost mechanical. Some repeated single words until they collapsed into nonsense. Others were fragments of phrases, as if parts of conversations torn from different times. The more they listened, the less sense it made, and the less human it sounded. Rachel clutched her arms, shivering. "It's not English. It's not anything." Eli pressed his palms against his ears. "They're inside my head. They're crawling in." Maya shook her head violently. "No, don't listen. It's not speech. It's just sound, just noise." But the longer the whispers filled the air, the harder it was to believe her. The forest seemed to breathe with them, every trunk, every branch vibrating faintly with that strange, half-formed language. Jonas's jaw tightened. For once, he had no plan. He only looked around at the walls of pine and the dark ground beneath, as if realizing the truth Rachel had already begun to sense. The swamp wasn't behind them. It was everywhere. The forest had lost its shape. Trunks leaned inward like warped pillars, their roots clawing above ground in grotesque knots. The soil flexed beneath their boots, not solid, but trembling, as though something vast shifted just under the surface. Jonas hacked at the thicket with his machete, each swing frantic, pointless. No matter how far he cut, the trees closed again. The air pressed down, damp, metallic, heavy with rot. Then the ground split. A roar of cracking mud tore through the clearing, and geysers of black sludge burst upward. From the rift came the tendrils, slick, veined, writhing in coils. They struck like whips. One lashed around Jonas's arm, another his waist. He fought, blade flashing, severing one, but three more seized him, dragging him toward the mire. "Pull him!" Maya screamed, clawing at his shoulders. A tendril lashed her face, leaving a welt that smoked red. Eli lunged in too, grabbing Jonas's other arm. Together with Rachel, they pulled, shouting, straining against the wet suction of the bog. Jonas's voice was hoarse, furious, not pleading. "Don't stop!" The ground heaved. Faces surged beneath the surface, pressing up by the dozens, eyes rolling, mouths opening wide in grotesque rhythm. Mud streamed into their mouths as if the swamp itself was feeding on their screams. Jonas sank to his chest, then his throat. Then only his mouth moved, snapping soundlessly before the mire took him whole. His grip broke. His hand vanished. Jonas was gone. The three collapsed back, gasping, spattered head to toe in sludge. The camera had fallen in the struggle, lens canted sideways, still recording the bog. Its tiny light blinked steadily, patient, unblinking. No one spoke. The swamp pulsed, slow and deliberate, as if savoring what it had taken. Beneath the surface, the faces stirred, drifting just out of reach. At last, Eli staggered forward and lifted the camera with trembling hands. Mud streaked across the screen, but the image was clear enough. It showed the swamp, the faces, and behind them, rows upon rows of figures. Pale silhouettes, standing in a wide circle around the bog. Unmoving, too many to count. They weren't trees, they weren't people. They were something in between, waiting. Eli's mouth worked soundlessly, his body shivering, as though the cold had finally reached his bones. And then the swamp stirred again. New tendrils uncoiled from the mud, slick and twitching, stretching hungrily toward them. Rachel's voice cut through the silence, raw, final. This is the end. The camera light blinked once, twice, then the screen went black.
If this story unsettled you, leave a like and let the shadows know. Subscribe for more tales you shouldn't hear after dark. And if you've seen something you can't explain, tell us in the comments. We're always listening.